The Brisbane Lions Fancast wouldn't be possible without our 2024 sponsors, Hop On Brewery Tours and Crisp Communications. Hop On Brewery Tours give you the chance to learn and experience some of the best craft breweries across Brisbane and the Gold Coast. Check them out and book yourself a tour right now at hoponbrewerytours.com.au. And Abby and the team at Crisp Communications, not only are they going to get you some Brisbane Lions Fancast stickers, but they can help you out. If you're in business and you need a marketing push, you need help with your digital marketing, your very own podcast, whether it's stickers for your own business, they offer it all. Web design, podcast management, social media, training and coaching, it's all available at crispcoms.co. Make sure you check out Abby and the team because they will get you everything you need to get your business skyrocketing. All right, let's get into the show.
Back to Lohman. Lohman on the left. 2 in a minute. Around the body, Charlie Cameron. That's why. Look at that.
Lohman from 30 and closing. He goals. Lohman's kicked 3 in a grand final in the first half. Back to Hipwood. He's a left footer, remember. Gets back on that left now. Lines them up. It's coming back. How did he kick that from there? They are on fire. They are up by 35 points. Off hands, maybe not, because Ashcroft is insured, but they continue to surge on. Danaher from a long way out. Rayner! Ashcroft. All the big names. Bailey to Danaher. Danaher, the final stamp on the day.
The Brisbane Lions Fancast is back a couple of weeks after the grand final now, and I think I'm starting to slow down on watching replays and things of that nature. I've started going back and watching the prelims and the semi-final replays now, so that's kept me somewhat entertained, as well as, of course, the rumour and innuendo that comes around at trade period time, and there's a bit to talk about there. But we're going to go into part 2 of our season review with JB and Patrick's, all thanks to the Hop On Brewery Tours, hoponbrewerytours.com.au, and they do gift vouchers and Christmas time coming up, so think about that if you're looking for a Christmas present for a loved one in the next couple of months or so. And of course, thanks to Crisp Communications, crispcoms.co. If you need any marketing for your business, whatever it is, email, digital marketing, if you've got a podcast of your own, if you need some stickers, we know Crisp Communications, Abby and the team will sort you out. All right, we're back. Part 2 of the season review. We're going to have a look at the back half of the season, starting with that fantastic Bulldogs game. And ending with the Essendon game at the Gabba. And then we'll chat a little bit about trade and some off-field movements to finish things off. But Patrick, how's your week been?
It's been all right. I found myself watching a YouTube compilation of every current Lions player's first goal.
Lovely.
And then their first goal for the Lions. Darcy Gardner, hardly knew him at that time. He was absolutely he was probably about 17 or 18 at the time anyway, but he looked absolutely weird. A bit of a blast from the past, but yeah, I think as you said, slowing down a touch just in terms of overall consuming things. Still waiting for you to give me the last quarter of the prelim on all of the commentaries, but we will.
Thank you for that reminder. I will do that. I will do that. That's my homework.
Stitch you up live just to kind of put the pressure on. But aside from that, just kind of keeping out of trouble, and you know me, I don't really like my trade nonsense, so I sort of just want to wait and see what happens at the end. And more than anything, just various little tidbits of good news, and aside from that, just taking a bit of a brain break, I think.
Yeah, I think it's obviously been a very long season, 27 games for a few of our players, and there's a big part of me that's ready for a bit of a break and get into the summer of cricket and switch modes for a little bit, but the AFLW is still going, and I'm obviously still heavily invested in that. And the girls got another win against the Gold Coast. It was a scrappy game, and the inside 50s were just left a lot to be desired. Anyway, we'll have a chat about that a bit later. So let's get into. We'll pick up where we left off. We talked about the first half of the games last week, and it all finished with that horrible loss against the Hawks at Marvel Stadium, where Jack Gunston suddenly remembered, hey, actually, I still can play footy. And speaking of, he signed another contract with Hawthorn. That's crazy. Obviously, whatever happened during the break, we spoke about it at the time, we were like, whatever they do during this break, it needs to be like a go to the Ed Kerno's farm and have a bit of a long, hard look at yourselves and have a chat and get the true circle going and say, hey, what do we need to fix things up? And obviously last week, I think it was, Dane Zorko said that during that bye week or thereabouts, him, Ryan Lester and Joe Danaher all got together and said, hey, look, maybe it's time that we start thinking about stepping aside and get some games into the kids and start looking towards the future. But then they all decided, no, we've still got plenty of footy left. We can make a good fist of this. And, well, the rest is history. And it all started at Marvel Stadium with probably one of my favourite games of the year, because it really was one of the few sort of four-quarter performances for the Lions against a good opposition, an away game. And the big talking point was the coming of Eric Hipwood's 6 goals too, with however many contested marks as well. He just absolutely 13 marks for Hippie on the day as well. Lachie Neale dominated this game as well, like 35 plus touches, 10 clearances, and a couple of goals as well. But this was definitely one of my favourite games of 2024.
Absolutely. I think the Bulldogs are in pretty good form going into it. I think they knocked off GWS, Collingwood. They'd pushed Sydney quite hard. But yeah, just going back to the old the reclusion on the farm, I like that juxtaposed with the Chris Fagan PowerPoint of just like, guys, we're doing all right.
Yeah,
just stick at it. Like, so you've kind of got the soul searching with the kind of the brutal realization or realism that we weren't actually doing too badly. But yeah, I think a big story of that, like Bontempelli was in some pretty big form, and we saw Jared Berry clamp in pretty hard. I know Bontempelli ended up with 3 goals, but he was floating forward to kind of try and create something of himself, because he was getting absolutely nothing in the midfield. And if you can get absolutely nothing in the midfield and save 2 of your 3 goals for the last quarter, well, you've done a good job. But yeah, Hipwood was amazing. Another thing to note about that game, it was after the holding the ball changes, and man, did we take advantage of that. I think in the first quarter, we had 7 holding the ball free kicks, 4, which, bit of a weird one, because sometimes I think the free kick count, and I might have talked about this in some sort of insane rambling at some other point, but maybe they should do something with that, have the holding the ball separate to the free kick counts, because I think good tackling technique and good pressure can often be construed as the umpires, doing you a solid. We're actually just playing good football. Anyway, that's not neither here nor there. We fucking killed them.
Yeah, we did. And I don't know, I think all this chat about David King, especially in the back half of the year, the thing that got me with Kingy probably the most, and I don't think he was particularly outwardly like, I don't like Brisbane. I think people just sort of like got the inference, but he was very much on the Bulldogs train. Like the Bulldogs were basically infallible to him. They could do no wrong. They were the best team ever, despite the fact that every 3 or 4 weeks they would just hand in an absolute stinker. So they handed into one to us, Port Adelaide, Adelaide, I think Melbourne got them as well. There was a few throughout the year, and obviously it all culminated in that elimination final. But just the way he always spoke about them every week, how they were best things since sliced bread. Their profile's ridiculous, and Hoyne was on that whole train as well. But we made them look genuinely simple that day.
We really, neutered them. That's not a popular term, is it? You're a dog owner. What do you think?
Yeah, sure.
I'm sure if you were to check my my Reddit comment history, you'd say me probably about this time being like, oh, they're waiting for the premiership window until David King's favourite team, the Bulldogs, are in there. So definitely, I think everyone was plumb aware that he was riding high on the Bulldogs, hoping for a repeat of 2016 when he actually didn't get that, so sucked in. But yeah, the less said about Kingy, the better.
To be fair, the Bulldogs' best was pretty good. They went through a big patch soon after where they were they were knocking off the top teams week in, week out. But yeah, it was very, very strange. Very strange.
So one thing I said at this time, probably not on here because it would have been a really unpopular and dumb sounding thing, but I said
it's never stopped
when we were having a bit. Sorry, yeah, that's not stopped me before. Fuck you. But when Hipwood is not doing so well, which was quite often in the back half, given, I mean, how much of that is injury, how much of that is form, whatever. But I I said, at least with Hipwood, you kind of know what you're going to get, and it's not super relied upon for him to win games. Whereas Jamara can go so missing, and it just completely tanks Bulldogs. Like, Jamara's fine, he's great, but if he doesn't fire, they're in so much strife.
Yep.
And it kind of does happen. So
early on, it looked like he was going to have one of those games as well, like he did against us last year.
Yeah, I think he kicked 2 early goals. But yeah, he's unreliable, and I get Hipwood's unreliable as well. But we've got other guys around that are kind of better than the Bulldogs guys. But yeah, it was. I think that game, one of the things that stuck out for me, I think Treloar kicked some bullshit goal, and then Dunkley kicked.
That's right.
So
yeah,
they had their first 2 goals of the game, and yeah, for a lot of the stories mid-year about Liberatore, like just having a brain made of like melted butter, he's still playing football. So,
it is. I mean, it could be worth noting, and it probably should be worth noting. They were missing Waitman, they were missing Ed Richards, and they were missing Norton in that game as well. So that obviously helped us along the way. And I think in the back of my mind, I had that because while the win, as I said, one of my favourites, because we looked good as poor as they may have been, we looked really good across the day, and it's something we've been looking for a while. I wasn't ready to, go, all right, we're back yet, because there was a couple of games I wanted to see it against, especially, I think the Port Adelaide game at Adelaide is one I had marked down. We had Melbourne coming up. St Kilda were in pretty good form at that stage as well, so I was like, well, I need to see this a few more weeks, especially against tough opposition away, before I'm ready to go, all right, let's jump back on here. So...
Well, it was worth noting, and I was very the fixtures we had a terribly hard fixture list.
Yes.
I mean, it was ranked the hardest in terms of, we talked about this in the lead up to the season, or I talked about where it was ranked the hardest by terms of opposition, but we've heard it before. We went to Adelaide 3 times, went to Perth twice. We had to go to Canberra. Well, we wound up going to Sydney, and then, so we were traveling more than anybody.
Yep.
With these hardest team fixture lists, and that's not even to kind of go into the idea of momentum and who was up and who was down and that sort of a thing, because we might have played St Kilda twice, but they won a lot of games in the back end of the season, and we torched them a bit later on. But yeah, I think it was a bit of one of those weird ones where you're like, are we back? We're not sure. It's hard because every week it seemed very crucial that we performed, and we performed well. And this was the start of where we kind of pulled our finger out, I think.
It certainly was.
Well, I mean, it definitely was.
100%. Obviously, we know we won the next 3 in a row. So the next week, we're taking on the Saints back at the Gabba. Joe Danaher absolutely started in this one with 5 goals. Logan Morris had one of his better games. He hit 3 goals.
So worth noting here, Brooksy, you picked the margin. I
did. That's right. I forgot about that.
You picked the margin, albeit you thought it would be a dour 62 to 42.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be that sort of affair, because I think the Saints were coming off probably it was that game against the Gold Coast, and it was just the most disgusting game of footy. And I thought, oh God, I can't believe we're going to be... And this was a Friday night
51 to 48 at Marvel.
Yeah. And I thought, oh God, this is going to be hopefully a little bit more entertaining, but I don't think it's going to be a fun game to watch. But it turned out to be just a shootout in the end. And what was it? Snags Higgins kicked 5. As I said, Joey Danaher kicked 5. And then there was heaps of multiple goal scorers across the day as well. Sinclair just went about his business, and Zorko had a fantastic game, but he 26 kicks from 30 touches. So was this the one? Oh no, this isn't the one he was going to.
No, that was the Gold Coast.
Yeah, 755 meters gained. So he had an absolute blinder.
And we had a collector's item in a Starcevic goal, which is a fun one.
That's right.
I think he was just crumbing out the back of a pack and just threw it on the boot, and he loved it. The big bald. I got to stop calling him bald. I love him. I don't know. It's just a point of difference.
Well, at the end of the day, he is bald. He's got no hair on his head. So, yeah, other than that, not a huge amount to speak about in this game. It was probably... I do remember it being one of Oscar's better games as well, though, against Rowan Marshall, who was in pretty rare form at the time as well.
Yeah, probably worth mentioning. He made Tim English look like an absolute full the week before. So there was an interesting kind of stretch of a few games where Owie was really good. Really good.
And then he dropped his head against Jordan Sweet the next week.
Yeah, it was something weird like that. Like, he wasn't actually... Yeah, I don't know. But, I admittedly don't have very many, if any, memories about that St Kilda game.
No, and I don't think many people do have too many fond memories against games involving St Kilda. So that's just an AFL standard, I would say. I'm sure Saint fans will disagree on that one, but you know what? Good on you. Next week was, again, one of the more pleasing games for so many reasons, and it was, I guess, a game that was...
Set the scene here. Yeah, set the scene.
A game that was talked about across the AFL, because this was the game that I think a lot of people thought, well, this could be the end of Ken Hinkley. His own fans were booing him off the ground. Anytime he popped up on screen, the jeers and the boos rang loud from across Adelaide Oval from his own fans, which, as we will find out later on in the season, potentially a little bit premature and ill-directed, but yeah, an absolute destruction of Port Adelaide at Adelaide Oval.
On their 20-year anniversary of
wearing the Guernseys. Zach Butters just doing Zach Butters things. He ended up having a pretty good game, but not as good as Lachie Neale. Clearly, with another 37 and 10 clearances, he was and Eric Hipwood kicked another 5.
There you go. I mean, it's the sort of thing where you look at it. That game's basically done at halftime, so you're looking at the game state, and we're just sort of keeping the margin as it is. Like, we were absolutely untouchable that day, and there was nothing they could really do.
I do remember in the combox in the last quarter, like, they were, Dermy and the like were going for, like, well, let's hit the 100 here. Like, Brisbane's
the 100-point margin.
Brisbane's going to kick 150, and we may see a 100-point win. And I was very all in on that.
Oh, I know you were. You were mad. Like, you were disproportionately mad. But it's fair to say that Ken Hinkley was not flying that day.
Oh, no, he was not. And I did feel bad for him in the aftermath of the whole thing, because, I mean, obviously Brisbane Lions fans have been fickle with Chris Fagan over the years, and especially this year, and like, Port fans got to be the most fickle, and I understand, because it's the same feeling that we've all got, is when you don't achieve the ultimate success, and he's been there, 12-ish years, give or take, like, perennial finals contender, top 4, makes a bunch of prelims, just hasn't even made a grand final. So I understand the impatience and the frustration, but that was a dark day for them.
I think I probably tend to agree a little bit with, like, Kane Corns, that their list isn't actually as good as I think it's overperforming. They've got, like, high level top talent, but there are some guys on that team you're like, what do you do? Like, what other teams are you actually going to get into that would
obviously
really
their midfield with Drew and Horn Francis and Butters and Rosie when he floats in and when he's having an okay game is up there with the best.
It's always a threat.
And Wines, you throw Wines in there. But then forward and back of the ball, it's just like their key position forwards and backs are just like Zerk Thatcher and
it's a bit like Sydney, It's like Sydney. Sometimes they just, if you can't get on top, or if a team goes to work on your midfield and just kind of breaks even, it can beat you ahead or behind the ball. Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Like, Zerk Thatcher had a horrible game. Radaglia is pretty overrated. And
of course he is.
I mean, which doesn't mean he's not a good footballer. He's just, like, why did they want him when him and Alia virtually do the same thing? They're not man-on-man hard. Like, it's just a bit of a nightmare. I don't care.
Like, Port Adelaide got what they could possibly get. Like, they had... So they've obviously got Alia, who's a great defender, but then other than that, they had Trent McKenzie, who's not a key position defender, who's been made into one, and Tom Cleary, who is, well, average at best. So what did they do? They found the key defenders that were available in Zerk Thatcher and Radaglia, and that was the best they could get. And I mean, by the end of it, Radaglia was playing up forward because he just wasn't filling the role down back. So, yeah.
They had that young fella that was talking, young defender that I think on his 360 interview was like, I was having to play on Hipwood and Danaher, and it was fucking hard.
Yeah.
The kind of curly head, TikTok looking dude. But yeah, we destroyed him, and I think we reveled in that one pretty hard.
Yeah, me especially. I was pretty disrespectful to Port Adelaide in the in the opening minutes of that podcast. And do I feel bad about it? A little, but also not really at the same time, because Port Adelaide. Enough said. So then we move on to an absolute classic at the Gabba. Melbourne were in real strife at this point. They'd just been absolutely smacked up by Freo and West Coast in recent weeks. They were really in a slump in their season, and they were there for the taking. But still, we know Melbourne and Brisbane, that rivalry, they could pop. Their best footy was still pretty good when they produced it, and they pretty much produced close to their best footy at the Gabba on a pretty wet night. And both teams thankfully kicked fairly inaccurately. We were 11 goals 20 to 11 goals 15, but it was the Hugh McCluggage goal after the Alex Neil-Bullen sideline try on the boundary.
So it was, I'm pretty sure, did McCluggage sign his new contract the week prior to that? Because I remember that almost being double it. Just double, triple, right, whatever. Anything you want, you can have it. There was... So this was... I mean, we've had quite a lot of... Oh, I had my tally! I've got my tally for my behinds and goals.
Yeah, but this goes into the what is it? The ones that we got away with.
It. Yeah. Well, there's not going to be much by way of tally, is there? So they probably need to be a bit less frantic.
No, there'll be a very obvious 2 that you need to mark down later on in the season, obviously. But yeah,
I can't even. Oh, here we go. So remember, I was so inaccurate that I wrote 5 instead of doing an actual tally. Okay, yeah. So. This was the series of weird things where we had Hipwood handballing it over the top of someone for a point, and Zach Bailey getting run down by Viney, and just a bunch of other really dumb things.
Was this the one where Joey Danaher had the most Joey Danaher moment? It could have been this game, it could have been another game at the Gabba, where he dropped a chest mark, went to pick it up, fell over, and then in a mad rush kicked it off the ground to try to get it to Kai Loman, but it went through for a goal. I can't remember if that was the game against the D's or another game, but I do remember that moment.
Yeah, I think it was this game, but I'm not 100% sure. But for the sake of argument, why not? How stupid! It's just... Yeah, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say.
Cozzy start on this one, 5 goals for those guys, but other than that, they didn't really have much going forward. Josh Dunkley, one of his huge game, he got the quadruple double here. 32 touches, 17 kicks, 15 handballs, 12 marks, 10 tackles, 7 clearances. So that is a massive game from Josh Dunkley. Massive.
Oh, dear, oh, dear. Yeah, this back half of the year was just a bit... It was chaotic as all hell at times, because they just did... It's just the one also... May played, but didn't he come back from, broken ribs in, 1 week?
Yeah, he was coming back. And it was the first game that Lever was back as well, I think, or one of the first 2 games that Lever was back from. He had a fairly long layoff with a knee. Yeah, that's right, yeah.
But yeah, so Cozzy Pickett was kicking snaps on his left foot from 50.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of kind of garbage going on here. Clayton Oliver had a pretty good game. Only said that twice in the whole year. We didn't really kind of go to him because he didn't seem like a threat.
Yeah.
We probably should have gone to him. But yeah, there was enough in that game. We won. Sucked in Melbourne.
I just remember their pressure was right up there, and if you're a Melbourne fan, it's well, this is what we've been hoping for so long. Why haven't you been able to produce this? This is probably some of their best footy without getting the win. So I do remember listening to the debrief after this one, because I shout out to the guys, Adrian and the team at the debrief. I think they put together a really good podcast. They were pretty flat after this game because they were very happy with the way the D's played without getting the win. So Yeah.
I think one thing to encapsulate this entire game is Harrison Petty subbed off with 0 goals for.
That's right. I remember like to halftime or three-quarter time, it was like Ben Brown was the only one that had a touch or something of their key
So
forwards.
Petty ended up with quite a few touches, and he went to torpedo, I think, at quarter time.
That's right, yeah.
Because I want to say that Melbourne kicked, like, they didn't kick any behinds for the first quarter or quarter and a half or something like that. And his torpedo, he got a hold of it. Holy shit.
He made the distance, yeah.
Yeah, but thankfully he didn't do anything. He's one that you can really give stick to for being bald. Because he was going into the ruck.
That's right, yep.
That's right. He was going into the ruck, and then they opted to just, I think, have Van Rooyen go in the ruck because Petty was so bad. It was some weird stuff going on there. A rare appearance from Woe Woden.
Yep.
So we had a comment last week. I said that Dan Cooney was the worst Brownlow medalist of all time.
Adam Cooney.
Sorry. Who the hell's Dan Cooney?
That's a great question because I got no idea.
I don't know. Adam Cooney. Someone disagreed. I won't say who. And they said that Shane Woden is actually the worst Brownlow medalist of all time. I would argue Woden played in 2 grand finals. Cooney didn't.
I think probably, I don't know.
You're splitting hairs at this point in time.
Basically, Adam Cooney probably had a better, longer career. I think Woden just had like the one good year and then it was fairly average either side of it.
Yeah. Carried the D's to that grand final somehow. But yeah, got away with that one. Max Gawn, he was there.
Yeah, he was fine. I think Oscar played him fairly
hold
well.
on, maybe it wasn't. No, Petty wasn't in the ruck if Gawn was playing, surely.
Not that game, but throughout the year they were using Petty and Van Rooyen in the ruck. And it's sort of like, well, why did you even get Tom Fullerton in if you'd rather play these guys in the ruck?
Well, Tom Fullerton's played in more wins against Melbourne than games for Melbourne, so...
Now, there's an interesting stat for you. All right, moving on from that one. And this was the start, like that one was actually the start of a series of quite close, almost frustrating games because then we had back-to-back games at the Gabba, which was nice for a change. We had Adelaide at the Gabba, and that was another tight affair. We've had some really close games with Adelaide. Probably last four or five games. I mean, we had the draw, and then last year it was like we won by a goal and then we went down to them Adelaide Oval in a fairly close game where we were up towards the end as well. And if that third quarter where we kicked 1-9 or whatever. So this goes down as another one of us being another close game where we win by 11 points. Lockie Neal, 36 touches, 3 goals, 10 clearances. My goodness me. He was in some rare form at this stage. And then Josh Dunkley following up with 35 and 1. 7 clearances. So let's go with only 5 tackles for Dunkley in that game. Pathetic.
What's he doing? So worth noting, just I think in the game before, Ashcroft made his return from injury.
That's right, yeah.
In the Melbourne game. So that was sort of, it was, I think he got 20 and ran around a bit, and we were all just happy to have him running around. So it was good. And there was just kind of almost like a steady, there was an improvement with maybe like a week's worth of plateau, followed by a bit of improvement. And then, so he kicked a goal in this game, Ashcroft did. Ben Keys, 4 goals.
Yeah. And just a quick sidebar, really happy to see Ben Keys win the BNF for the Crows. Joint winner with Dawson, which, bloody good on. Like, I really hope we do see Dev get a game somewhere, and we'll chat about him later and play the good footy that we know he can. Because it sucks that we've got these great players on our list that we simply just can't fit into our team, and Ben Keys is really one of them. Hinge as well. So I'm glad they've found themselves homes, and now he's won a BNF, so bloody good on him. The other huge...
He's been knocking at the door, right?
Yeah.
Like, because he's been pretty solidly good for a while, and he plays his role pretty selflessly, whether it's, tagging role or run with, or, often on half-backers and negating roles, but hit the scoreboard pretty hard here, eh? So...
The other obviously massive thing to come out of this game is Isaac Rankin's massive hit on Brandon Starcevich, knocking him cold out and then missing the next. Was it 4 he ended up with for that? 3 or 4?
Yeah, it wasn't not 3. Sorry, it wasn't It wasn't 3, so must have been 4 or 5. Yeah, he barely had a kick at that point in time.
And then I think
the footy world were not happy with that. So
yeah, and then second half he somehow managed to get his hands on the ball and kick a couple of goals, largely due to the fact that Brandon Starcevich was off the ground. He was that worried about him, he had to bump him off the ball, and looking back on it, I think, at the time, I don't think he meant to get him high. It was unfortunate, but he did get him high, and that's what happens. You bump someone off the ball when they're not looking and get them high, you're going to face consequences.
Yeah, I think it's the sort of one where if you're not trying to get him high, he was trying to hurt him.
Yeah.
You can try and hurt someone without going high. And I think, may have paid the price, and it's kind of dumb behaviour. It's pretty archaic, to be honest. So, not a good look, and I'm glad we won in the end. So, I didn't realise Neil kicked 3 goals. Like, you said that before. I wasn't really listening, but shit, that's a lot of goals. How many times did he kick 3 goals in a game? Probably
Not only
twice.
that, do you remember that huge contested mark he had?
Yeah.
In the middle of 3 Crows players, he just stood up and took this. That was just unbelievable from Neil. And that was probably one of them. He's obviously a very impressive footballer, but that one stands out because it's not his bag. We know what he can do, and we saw it on the grand final again, picking the footy up off his bootlaces, going at 30 k's an hour and dishing it off cleanly. But a big, strong contested pack mark is not something Lachie Neale for, and he pulls it out and kicks a goal.
No. So we talked before, or like I said, Port Adelaide's list is kind of not very good and not performing. I think Adelaide's list is better than how they're performing. Because you look at some of the guys that are not playing particularly well, Rochelle, some of the other players. I didn't think Dawson had a particularly good year this year.
I think it was fine. It's just his last year was really good, and this was just down on by that standard. I think that's probably the only thing. He's still I really like Jordan Dawson as a footballer. But yeah, he was certainly down on his form from last year, but he's not alone. Tex had a ridiculous season last year as well, and he came right back. So, they're widely sort of known as probably one of the more underwhelming teams for this year.
Underperforming, yeah.
Because they were literally a bad umpiring decision away from finals last year.
Yeah, well, it happens. But yeah, we got the points after that one. It's good. Kept the roll going, and the following week we had... Who did we have?
We had West Coast over there in the new coach bloody extravaganza with Schofield's first game at the helm. And once again, Lachie Neale dominating 34 touches, 2 goals, 13 clearances. If you don't bloody mind. Tim Kelly had a cracking game for them. Other than that, this was a game of all right, well, let's just get the win. I don't really care how it happens because they got a new coach, and we all know what can happen in this week where a team gets a new coach. Let's just go over there, get the win. And that was basically what it was. We kept them at about 2 goals the whole game, more or less.
Yeah, I think I said at the time that their kind of hype and momentum was good for about 4 to 6 goals.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what happened. This is, again, another one that, aside from Charlie Cameron's tackle on Duggan, that caused all kinds of fallout the following week, was nightmarish. The rest of it sort of, Reed wasn't particularly good, which was, I think, pretty lucky for us. He had flashes, but he wasn't. He didn't break us apart.
He was really good early on in the season. Then, as the season wore on, he sort of fell away a little bit. Still produced some moments, but you could tell the marathon of the season is catching up to him, and he wasn't being able to produce it week in, week out.
We had for a couple of weeks we'd had Joyce playing as well down back. Because I believe Payne had gotten injured in the St Kilda game, maybe?
So, yeah, Payne was out, and then he came back for that Adelaide game and did not look right, and he went straight back out, and Joyce came back in, and that was it for the rest of the home and away season. But, yeah, he came back in for that Adelaide game and just did not look right. He was hobbling around, he was resting up against the fence at times, barely able to stand on that foot, so something clearly wasn't right. They tried to bring him back just to see how it was going to go, and it was obviously no good. So we had Darryl Joyce for most of the rest of the season, except for when he broke his face, and then we'll come up against that game against the Gold Coast in a couple of weeks' time, where we had bloody no key defenders. How funny!
So like this is a pretty like this West Coast game kind of encapsulates that we had 10 different goal kickers.
Yeah,
and that's kind of sort of what I was saying before talking about the Bulldogs. Like the threats come from all over the place. It just, I don't know, it kind of works. Everyone pops up and does some stuff, and the load's not too big on any single individual. So, but yeah, that was it was a good game. It was a bit stressful, and I just sort of I think West Coast kind of got what they were hoping for out of it in terms of like a nice performance for Simo, who absolutely booked it with about 2 minutes to go out of the stadium.
Yeah, fair enough too.
Yeah. He got that spray jacket off as soon as he could as well. So, I mean, I like Simo, seeing him like pop up prior to finals and during the finals and stuff. I think he's got more to give to football, and not that I know or really care, but he'll crop up and he'll do well with another team, I'm sure. So, yeah,
I think he'll take some time off, and then it'll be nice to see him pop up at North Melbourne again in some aspects. I mean, I know it's probably just a little bit romantic and may not actually be viable. But yeah, as you said, I'm sure he'll pop up again at some point and make a difference wherever he does pop up. But now that the shackles are off and he's, hopefully a little less stressed in life. But I did like what they did for him pre-game. Like, I thought that was like, because the talk all the week about how he was treated by the media and all that sort of stuff, it was just like really unceremonious the way that it was all dealt with by club and by media, and all of it was just sort of like, well, this guy did bring you a premiership. Yeah, they've been garbage the last couple of years, but what about his whole career there? So that was a nice little way to bring it back, I thought. And then a game that a lot of people called as the grand final preview, and turns out they were right to a degree. The game against Sydney at the Gabba, at the hot afternoon, it was a Saturday afternoon at the Gabba, where Archie kicked the absolute screamer at the end. We had Papley go off with an ankle, Hayward was on one leg, Rampy went down as well. So Sydney were really scrambling for numbers, but what an absolutely cracking game of footy.
You were there?
I was there. Yeah, it was immensely tense, but very enjoyable.
Yeah, it was a bit back and forward, wasn't it? Like, it's hard to remember super well, but there was big momentum shifts, and we got out to, we probably didn't make the most of our first quarter, and then Sydney bit back really quickly. I think they got 3 quick goals at the start of the second quarter. They killed us from centre clearance. And I don't really know how that kind of worked, because they seemed to get a couple of marks out of their 3 buffheads up top. Their second quarter, they killed us 6-1. So they took a pretty handy lead into half time. And then I think we were kind of just trying to outlast them a little bit, use our nous, and the fact that they were kind of, a bit hamstrung on the bench, figuratively and literally. But that last quarter, a few goals back and forward. We ended up with 4 goals to 2 in the last quarter, and Cal could have iced it at the end, and we saw him right those wrongs in the grand final. So
that's right.
It was a good one, but it felt. Sorry, go on.
A couple of standouts from this one. It was one of Cam Rayner's. This was like right in the peak of where Cam Rayner was having that just rich vein of form, and he looked every part of that, bursting midfielder, explosive forward that we been speaking about forever and a day, where he's breaking tackles. There was that one where Hipwood
ran through,
tunneled bloody Blakey, and then he came out the end of it. And then that last quarter where Huey kicked those 2 in a row, including that just bullshit one from the centre square where he just whacked it on the boot and it went through. I think one
of the things that stood out for me was Rayner monstered Goulden at one point, got him in a tackle, and it just, you could see the size difference, and he's just like, fucking hell. Like, Goulden's a runner, but far out, like, don't get caught, dude. Like, it's not going to be good for you. So, there were some things to like about that game for sure, and we weren't particularly accurate. That one will go in the just got away with it column.
Very much so. And as we learned, this is the game where Eric, that's where the OP started. Like, this is where the groin strain started for him. And Harris Andrews got concussed. He was missing the last quarter, basically the entire quarter. He was off with an HIA. Came back on and then got concussed to miss the following week. But I remember Shadow Brain really stepping up in that last quarter, taking 2 huge contested marks down back, intercept marks, and moving the ball forward through the middle of the ground. And it was easily his, well, maybe not his best game, but like probably his best moments on an AFL field for Shadow, stepping up in those moments. So yeah, the next game was a weird one where it was, the whole chat the following week is like, what the hell are we going to do about a key defender? Because Harris is out, Dara Joyce is out with a facial fracture, obviously Jack Payne's missing. What the hell are we going to do? Well, I guess we'll name Joe Danaher at centre half back, but we'll put Eric Hipwood down there.
Why do they do that?
Oh, just fun.
You know, it is fun. It does, anyone with half a brain knows kind of more or less how the team's going to line up. But those that don't get really hung up on it. Yeah. And you see it. Like, what are we doing? Put this guy here. And it's like, you watched any game ever? Like, and this is probably the anomaly. There was that great picture that was put up. It's like, how did these things get here? And like the full back line, I think was Zorko, Danaher, and I don't know, some other Plonker or whatever. But how they held together. So more context to this game: the Suns hadn't lost at home all year.
That's right.
And
couldn't win one away. Couldn't lose one at home. Surely they're going to.
I don't know about you, but I was worried by this game, and I think a lot of people were. And
Of course, we had no fucking key defenders, and we're coming up against a team that has beaten.
I mean, before the game, like before we had no defenders, I was like, this is going to be a tough one. And then you go in and you're like, all right, well, you've got the Giant King. I can never remember which one's which. What are they? Max and Ben. So Bax King.
Max is at Moorabbin is the easiest way I remember it.
Right, and Ben's by the bay, but also St Kilda's by the bay. See, this is what happens when I try to do these things. Anyway,
so
he couldn't kick. He couldn't kick straight at all. No, and he is, in my opinion, vastly the better king. Maybe that's how I remember it. Ben, the better king.
There you go.
At the Gold Coast until Max goes and kicks like 60 goals next year, which is not going to happen. So there were some classic moments. We obviously had the Hipwood King battle that resulted in them with a goal apiece.
That's right.
Which is fun.
That's right.
And then I think probably what will go down is probably one of your favourite moments of the season, I reckon.
Oh, yeah.
The Zorko spoil.
The Zorko spoil. And I think it's just a combination of the lead up to this game where we've got no key defenders. And I thought leading up to this game, you're like, surely this time they're going to do something about Dane Zorko, who's already won the Q Clash medal once. They're not going to let him just do whatever he likes again. Okay, no, they are. Fine. And yeah, a big contested spoil in the pocket of the ground and just the carry on from the team. That was really good. Like, that was just uplifting stuff because, you know, like, your backs are up against it and you've got the smallest player on the list taking on spoils, lifting when the team needs you. That was awesome. He was
really good. Lachie Neale obviously played. Like, Lachie Neale had a lot of good games.
He really did. That's why everyone thought like he was going to be in there like top 3, top 5 for the Brownlow because he just kept producing 30, 35 touch gains and hitting the scoreboard and double-digit clearances. And you're like, well, he's obviously going to pole in these games.
And he polled in some of them, not a great, probably not as many as he should have. I think he had a bit of a recency bias against. Yeah. But Henry Smith was kind of like lurking around in the team. He had his debut in the Sydney game the week before. That's right. And I didn't think he looked bad. No. Like, he looked a bit spooked, but when you're going in literally in what people are touting as a grand final rematch and then going into a bit of a hot environment against Gold Coast, it's hard to kind of make an impact at this point in the season. We had a couple of collector's items, the Jackson Pryor performance, which we all know that I love. But aside from that, it's like pretty well in a similar vein to the Gold Coast game earlier on in the season, which was like a backs to the wall knife fight. This one we just kind of bullied them, and we're like, nah, we need this more than you do.
100%.
We really needed it.
You could feel the momentum and the belief growing at this stage. I think that Sydney win really would have given the team a lot of belief, a lot of hope that actually, right, we've won a few games on the trot here, and when we're on, and we can match it with the best teams, and we're missing a backline. So, if we can get all our ducks in a row, start kicking straight, all that sort of gear, then maybe we're a shout to make. And it was at that point where the ladder was just doing some weird shit as well. Like, everyone that we needed to lose was losing, and everyone we needed to win was winning, and we would just go like boop, 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 boop. We went from like 13th to 8th to 4th to 2nd. Like, it was just sort of all during this time here, and then, as we'll find out very soon, it all came sort of crumbling apart. But not before we went down to Marvel Stadium and smashed St Kilda by 85 points in another four-quarter performance where it was just domination from start to finish.
And another example of a game I hardly remember, because it was just like, okay, cool, brilliant. Like, no one needs to remember these 85-point wins. You just know they happen, and then like in 5 years' time, you watch the extended highlights and go like, oh shit, look at them go.
And I think that's when a lot of the media was jumping on the Lions, like, all right, these guys are fucking back here. Like, they're almost premiership
Dwayne
favourites.
Russell coined it at the end of the game. That's probably the only thing I do remember. He's like, here's your flag favourites. And it's like, dude, you fucking jinxed us. Just relax.
And I thought to myself, oh, relax. It's only a game against St Kilda. But when you look at it, at this game, in amongst the other games that St Kilda had, like their few games before and few games after, it was actually a pretty impressive win in a lot of different ways. Not only the margin, but like Saints were playing good footy against good teams, and we just made them look dumb.
Well, Ross Lyons said that he wanted to be the Grinch of the final series.
That's right.
And I think I remember talking to you and being like, well, he ticked off every name except ours, because maybe he knew that we would contrive to screw it up ourselves anyway. As it turns out, we ended up winning the premiership. But, at the time, it looked like a good shout because, we'd obviously cocked up the next few games. But, yeah, this one was just lots of contributors, lots of multiple goal kickers. Hard to really say. Do you remember anything from this game, Brooksy?
Not a huge amount. It was another game where Bruce was in amongst the action. Logan kicked 2, Zach Bailey kicked 3, Rayner 3, Joe Danaher 4. Hipwood was he missing in this one? Hipwood was missing in this one.
Yeah, so I think Hipwood had a couple of weeks off.
Yeah, this was when he was in groin mode. So, what do we have?
Henry Smith did play.
That's right, well. Yeah. So Bruce and Harris came in, McKenna and Hipwood went out, and it was probably the first of a couple of weeks where McKenna found himself out of the team, and we thought, okay, let's have a look.
That was one for the negative Nancy's, the outs.
Yeah.
Hipwood and McKenna. Like, the baying blood had been happening.
Yeah.
And it was like... but I think, come end of the season, they had premiership players as well. So, yeah, I mean, probably the less said about this game, the better. Go watch the replay, go watch the highlights. Like, that one would be a fun one to just see dudes just, like, smashing St Kilda.
Yeah. If that's the idea.
Really making you question, is Josh Battle actually worth a 8th pick or whatever? But, let's go into that again.
All right, now let's...
and then...
Yeah, that's where at that stage, 9 in a row, a huge win against St Kilda. And I said to myself throughout the week, because I was not sold at this point, I said to myself, okay, if we beat the Giants at the Gabba, I will look into flights for the last weekend in September down in Melbourne. That's what I'll do. That's my pass mark, if you will. If we beat the Giants at the Gabba, that's when I'll look at flights and start exploring some options there. 8 goals, 16, and a very deflating loss against the Giants later, where Darcy Jones in the last quarter, Cadman played a ridiculous game. Hogan was, fine, 3 goals. It was probably one of Will Ashcroft's best games since being back, but yeah, a pretty deflating loss by 3 goals in the end, where they kicked stupidly accurate and we were woefully inaccurate, and once again, even looking at this game in the sort of second and third quarter, we still had the lead. And it's like, all right, if you can just fix this, if you can just kick straight and keep them at arm's distance, we'll get away with this. No dice. Yucky.
No. Which is funny. You look at it and you go, like, the false economy of how our kicking was within the season and the false economy of how GWS's kicking was to keep them, well ahead of where they probably should have been. Like, it all kind of evened out in the end, really, because, like, Jesse Hogan, he had so many easy shots at goal throughout the whole year, and it's not a wonder that he won the Coleman. So, funny little kind of anomaly there where you give it to him in that like slice of pie out the front of the goal.
Yeah, and
that's all he does. Like, how often did you see him try and kick from 50 or kick from the pocket and stuff like that? So,
what is it?
Yes.
And sorry to talk about David King again, but he said he's never seen a team that focuses their whole structure on one key forward the way that GWS do since they did back in the 90s with Wayne Carey. And that's because he could just take a contested mark, 15 to 30 out from goal. And that's all that he did, basically. And he was deadly accurate because he never had to take a tough shot at goal. So, I'm
worth noting, though, that North Melbourne did have Corey McKernan playing for them at full forward, though.
That's true.
Like, that's pretty good. Like, Pagan's paddock wasn't just for the one dude. It was for the two of them. So, David King doesn't have memory of his own career because this was one of the things that shit me the most about that guy. So the cat's trying to like open the door with his opposable thumbs. So just pointing that out there. If I die before next week, it's the cat. This is what really, really frustrated me was David King and Montagna showed a montage of how I think at the time who was playing forward with him. Because it wasn't Callum Brown. It was Gruzowski.
Yeah, Gruzowski.
That Russian sounding dude, yeah. So he was showing montages of like them having a little dance in the goal square, and then they'd go, okay, so Harris is tracking Hogan. Bam, they're gone. Oh shit. Now Harris is isolated on the other one, and Darragh Joyce is facing the wrong way, and he's supposed to be on Hogan. So he went to all this thing of saying, yeah, they focus so hard on it. But then when we come to the preliminary, the elimination final, where he's just like going off, being like, oh, you got to swap the matchups. And it's like Fagan said, he's like, I can't be bothered with trying to get them right matchups if they're just going to manipulate them anyway. So that to me was just like, I don't know, it's almost dishonest in terms of what he was, his analysis, and it's just like complete ignorance to what he had said 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of the people who recognize that was so like, you're really going in and it's a bit personal here on Fagan. So I think just not admitting that you said something different. So fuck David King.
And this was another game where Oscar got towed up in the ruck by Lockie Keefe.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah.
It was a really disappointing game for a lot of reasons. Not quite as disappointing. And I remember saying after this game, it was like, it wasn't the loss that annoyed me. It was the nature of it. But I was still fairly buoyant because we did enough right that I thought, okay, that is a bit of a blip. And as long as we don't do that again, we're okay here. Turns out we did it again next week against Collingwood, where we got off to what most teams would call an unassailable lead, and then throughout the course of the game just watched it dwindle and dwindle, and then we got a bit of margin back in the third and fourth, and then it was bloody Lockie Schultz and Beau McCreary in the 11th hour just to pinch the win against us. And we didn't kick terribly inaccurately. It was 11-12 to 11-13 in this game, but this is a game where Joey Danaher did some strange stuff. And yeah, this was the game where I was like, okay, well, top four is done now.
Done.
And unless a bunch of stuff goes right, top four is done. And it's going to be we've made it very, very hard for ourselves moving forward here. And maybe that's all she wrote. We'll be making up the numbers in come finals time. But obviously we know that wasn't the case. But Yeah, this was much more disappointing than the week before because it happened again in a very similar fashion against a team that we were clearly better than. I mean, Collingwood's back 5 games were actually pretty impressive. They played some good footy, but yeah.
We should have won this game.
We should have won this game. Absolutely, we should have won this game.
Do you remember what I asked you in the fallout of this game? Because Nick Dacos ended up with 2 goals, 25 touches.
That's right.
He got 4 touches in a half of footy because we clamped him in the first quarter and the last quarter. And I said, so he got 25 and 2. Lachie Neale got 22 and 2 goals. And I said, do you think Neale will get Brownlow votes? And you said no. And I said, do you think
yes, that's right.
Nick Dacos will? Nick Dacos got the 3 votes this day for playing a quarter and a half of football.
That's right.
I guess, whatever. That's where football's at.
Yep.
But yeah, just to find out, because I luckily that was after Cripps had won.
Yeah.
So I was just like, okay. I think McCreary got 2 votes, something like that. It was something stupid. But yeah, so we did not cover ourselves in any glory in that game. Joe Danaher 4 goals too, and probably did some other weird shit. But
that was his best and worst game. He did that big barrel from about 60 meters out. They just went straight out on the full. It was a strange but very typical Joe Danaher game where we got the whole gamut of what Joe's about, and sadly,
I think at the time the rhetoric was like only Joe Danaher can kick 4 goals and we'll lose by a point and blame him.
Yes.
And it's like, I don't think we're blaming him. We were sloppy at defensive half stoppage, and we made Lachie Schultz look like an actual player for the only time in the season. So
the silver lining from this whole thing is this is where, it was pretty obvious, but it was blindingly obvious that we are having a real issue with small forwards, and that Connor McKenna just simply wasn't the answer. Shadow Brain had let himself down defensively, and it was time to bring Noah Answorth in for that balance of, all right, so you got Zorko and Wilmot as your, dashing, running, attacking halfbacks. We need 2 lockdowns, or, actual defense-first defenders, and then your keys. And that's when Noah came in the following week and didn't look back. That was the silver lining.
Yeah, and I think there'd been people calling in either in the comments or the speak pipe just to be like, we need to find a settled defense going into finals, and not so much that we knew that Payne and Harris would hopefully come back, or whether it would be Harris and Joyce. It was the smalls that were actually kind of causing a lot of the instability, I think. But yeah, it's a bit of a shame, and I hope Brain comes back after preseason and is better than ever, because if his most recent football memory is him not tracking fucking McCreary.
Yeah.
And that's not a good one to have as your last kind of football memory. So hopefully not that.
No.
Getting back in Dawson from his creek. And then look absurdly like Dawson from Dawson's Creek.
And then we finish off with a game against Essendon at the Gabba. Dyson Heppel's last game at the Gabba, because why wouldn't you? And a fairly just easy win in the end. 11 goals, 21. Yuck. But never really looked like losing it. We was never really in danger of losing it because Essendon... It was going to go one of 2 ways for Essendon. Their season got finished the week before, so they were going to come out and play for pride and respect, or they were just going to be like, all right, it's done. Let's just get this over with. And it was... I don't know, sort of halfway in between. They played an okay game, but never really looked like winning it. And this was just a game that we simply had to win, and we were never, ever behind.
No, I think Essendon were probably the only team in the competition with the entire inability to put any speed on the game whatsoever. They gave it a crack, but they just couldn't.
Yeah.
I just need to check something with you. Did I Jaws the shark it up there with Dawson's Creek? The main character from Dawson's Creek isn't called Dawson, surely?
I don't know.
I haven't watched it. I've assumed you had. You seem like a hip kind of new age person.
Sorry, mate. As much as I enjoyed looking at Katie Holmes when I was a younger boy, I didn't really ever get into Dawson's Creek.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. If I've
Was Katie Holmes
Jaws
even
the
in
Shark
Dawson's
did. Sorry?
Was Katie Holmes even in Dawson's Creek, or was she in another one that was basically the same?
I don't know. This is
Anyway, it's your Dawson's Creek Fancast with JB and Patrick.
and / Jaws Fancast, because I've called Jaws the Shark. Essendon just couldn't do anything in this game. No. It just wasn't happening. And thankfully, it was a relatively stress-free, although they did kick 4 goals. And they kicked 5 goals in the last quarter.
Yeah, we'd packed up at that point.
Yeah. We certainly had. Yes. We really need to stop doing that. And I'm glad we stopped doing that immediately after this game.
Yes. Well, maybe, yeah, sort of.
I mean, packing up at the... Yeah.
The Carlton game. Anyway, we'll get to that next week.
A bit in the grand final too, technically. You know, we want to see a 4-quarter performance.
Well, yeah, fair enough. Definitely different circumstances.
No, I'm just being you throughout the year. Mr. 4-quarter performance every year. I'm like, you only need 3.
Yep.
Just don't screw up the last one too much.
Yeah. Well, that's the home and away season done, and we find ourselves finishing 5th after squandering a top 4 finish with those 2 pretty upsetting games against GWS and Collingwood.
And you'd consider it a pretty underwhelming 5th, I'd say.
I think it depends how you look at it. 3 weeks ago, absolutely, when we were slated to finish 2nd, maybe even 1st, if things had gone a certain way. But if you had asked me at the bye, hey, you guys are going to finish 5th, I would have taken that every day of the week. So it really depends on the context of it all. And in the end, it didn't really matter, and it made for it. It's all part of the package, part of the story in the end. So, if those 2 losses were the ones we needed to have to correct our back 6 and know that we needed Noah Answorth in there and a defensively minded Small, then sure, I'll take it. It's all hindsight now.
All ancient history, you might say.
Very good. All right, that's the home and away season done. And we're just on an hour here, so good for us.
Thank goodness.
Let's quickly rattle through some trade news. So it looks like
So just for what we know here, so we had 6 games where we fucked up from having too many behinds and 5 games where we just got away with it.
There you go.
So 11 games where we kicked more behinds than goals. That's stupid.
Yuck.
It's really dumb.
Harry Sharp is looking like he's heading to the D's. With Lockie Hunter and Alex Neil-Bullen gone, they seem to think there's an opening for him there. Sure.
It just means that they'll have 2 identical wingers. Like, you know, we've been saying over the past couple of years that he's kind of more like a Langdon-style winger. They're going to literally have Langdon and Sharp.
Yeah. Probably Langdon a little bit better at 40. Great athlete, Sharp.
Yeah.
His decision-making and stuff is...
I mean, I think it's also just lack of game time.
Yeah. We did see when he had a little bit of continuity, maybe last year, he had, 6 or 7 games in a row, he was starting to put together some decent footy, so I'm happy for him. At the end of the day, we need and want picks to get our boys through the door, Levi and Sam Marshall. That's all we want to achieve in this off-season, so if we can do that, bloody fine. Dev has now been linked to Collingwood. Their first...
I don't like that.
I don't like it either. I'd much rather him go home and play for West Coast, but at the end of the day, wherever he sees him being able to play senior footy, then sure, that's up to him.
He actually would fit in quite well at Collingwood, to be honest, because they got an ageing midfield and there's spots in there for him, and he can do the grunt work to let their Ponzi players do their shit. So
yeah, he probably would. I guess we'll see over the next couple of days. And look, it may have already happened this morning. It's 10:15 on Monday morning. Trade radio is going on, and there's 2.5 days left of this stuff. So
trade radio.
Yep. Looks like we will be picking up Sam Day as a delisted free agent from the Gold Coast as a stopgap for Joe Danaher. So, I don't mind Sam Day. He's obviously not Joe Danaher. He's a reliable kick at goal. He's good for 2 goals a game. He can play second ruck. He's 32. Hasn't played.
Who have we historically? We've picked up players from the Gold Coast in the past. They've been Dan Zorko, Jared Lyons, Kalachi. Pretty good record there.
Yeah. So look, I think he'll mostly play VFL while we develop Henry Smith. It'll just be good to have him there while Henry Smith is still developing, and
Yep.
in case someone gets injured. If Hipwood gets suspended again, or if Hipwood gets groin soreness, or Henry Smith injured, whatever, I think it'll be a good sort of stopgap for a year, maybe two, depending. I don't mind it. It's not going to cost us anything. That's the main thing. Probably the biggest off-season news from last week is Danny Daly. We spoke about how his name's been mentioned. Collingwood, West Coast were after him. He's staying put, so that's huge.
Yeah, it's good news. It's a bit of an unquantifiable one for me because I don't really understand the minutiae and the shit that they do. But by all accounts, he's virtually irreplaceable. So, happy to hear that. And you kind of just want a bit of club stability.
Yeah.
We saw with last year, Collingwood, they did a bunch of stuff and, administrative-wise in the off-season, and it didn't serve them particularly well. So, good to hear that.
So, at this stage, Murray Davis out, Stewie Dew in, which, you have to say that's good. I don't know that it's a net positive, net negative, but I think it sort of at least evens out. And then to hold on to Danny Daly, that's shrewd, and that's good stuff for us. We've done a bunch of pick swaps, so we traded out our first round pick to Richmond, and now we've got a bunch of lower picks,
junk picks,
second and third, fourth rounders that I think it netted us 900 odd points. So that's obviously going to go towards getting Levi, and you would have to imagine there was a handshake deal as part of that as well, as saying, hey, we'll give you our first round pick for all this other stuff, but also you don't bid on Levi for your pick one, please. So you'd have to imagine.
Yeah, good point. That's a good pickup.
I think that's going to be part of it. And similar to what GWS did with Cadman in the other Ashcroft, is you don't want to piss away your first pick and give a 10 grand portfolio to someone that's not going to be playing for your team. You want the person you pick to feel that pick one specialness and all that sort of gear. So you'd imagine that's going to be part of it. We did another pick with Carlton.
I think we did a future second.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there'll be a bit of that as well.
Dealings with Carlton, to be honest, but
sure. I mean, whatever. I don't really care. That, like I said, the one thing we want to achieve in this off season is getting those kids in. And it looks like by the time that Sharpie and Dev and maybe Jackson Pryor, if he doesn't go as a delisted free agent, we should have enough points to get that done. So
Pryor out of contract.
He is, and he hasn't been offered one yet. I think it's sort of like a look around. And I think Essendon's pretty big on him. That's where his uncle or dad played or something, I think. So yeah, he looks likely to set off regardless. So I don't know if we'll just go, hey, there you go, just go as a delisted free agent, or if we're going to try and organise a trade there, because I don't know that we'd offer him a contract anyway. Maybe a year potentially. Who knows? There hasn't been any chat about it. Yeah. Just quickly, AFLW. Q clash at Brighton Homes Arena. Isabel Dawes was absolutely huge, as was Ellie Anderson, as always. Taylor Smith is killing it, 2 goals, 2, so a little bit wayward in front of goals, but God, the inside 50s were just pretty hard to watch, just dumping it on the heads, and there was a lot of intercept marking from the Gold Coast. I think their defence was pretty good, but a gritty win, and got the win. So 7 in a row for the girls now, and third on the ladder after Hawthorn had their massive win. So we're battling.
They got to keep it up.
Yeah, we're battling it out with Hawthorn for that McClellan Trophy. We're 2 points ahead now. So the first team out.
Thank God we drew with Adelaide.
Yeah. So the first team that blinks, the first team that drops a game, ramifications potentially. So just got to keep winning both of those teams. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. Other than that, there's 3 games left for the fixture for the girls, I think. So final 3 games.
And I think it's all. Yeah, it does seem like the two between Hawthorn and the Lions should pick up wins in all of them, but hopefully we'll just see what happens.
Geelong next down there, followed by Sydney, who have just been absolutely smashed by injuries, unfortunately for them. And then St Kilda. St Kilda will be a tough game. They've been, when they turn it on, they turn it on. So they've just got smacked over the weekend. But once again, a team that's had a few injuries. So yeah, something to keep an eye on there, and another finals campaign for the girls ahead. Now, last week, and in fact the week before, you asked for people to send through their memories from the grand final and, the moments that they they enjoyed or remembered or whatnot stood out to them. And Ross, the fellow that sent through our quiz at the end of the year.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. He sent through one, and it, for some reason, it ended up in my spam. So thankfully, he messaged me on Instagram, and I managed to dig it out. He said he loved listening to the grand final pod on his late flight night out on Melbourne for the Monday night. He said his best moment was Hipwood's goal from the pocket, the Acker goal. He said where they were sitting, they were right in the line of Hipwood and the goals, so he could actually see the ball drifting away, wrong side of the post, before just coming back and going through. And he said that moment he thought that to have the celebration in your head was done when you were 8 was icing on the cake, but the whipped cream on top was that Acker was 2 rows in front of me. And
oh, shit.
Acker went absolutely nuts when he saw Eric Hipwood bust out the celebration. So that would have been cool.
Yeah, very, very nice. Yeah, Akamata still loves it, you know.
Of course he does.
Yeah, he's a bit of a bonehead, but, you know, he, I suppose, was our bonehead. And, no, that's great to hear. I love as well, you know, between the quiz that we did by Ross, we're all forgiven now. I think after the premiership, we're all forgiven for the things that we say throughout the year. So I just want to... next year, I'll try to just be more external with my vitriol.
It's always good.
A bit like you. Because you're of this good cop, bad cop dichotomy, your heinousness regarding Port Adelaide really went under the radar. So...
It was out of character, but I enjoyed it, and... I'll try and keep it under wraps moving forward.
We want more of that so that I can, by like osmosis, appear less.
Sure, okay.
So,
another
bad boy Brooksy next year.
One more shout out to our mate James, listener, who has is bringing out those Ice Dancers shirts. The Froggy Leicester shirt is out now as well. The Charlie Cameron one. There's a Joe Danaher one, and there's just like a cool Premier's shirt as well. The links are available.
Do like the Premier's one? Yeah. That's good. Kind of reminds you of the ones that, like, you know, I remember having one of those like that brought back.
Yeah.
From the 2001 grand final when my family were up, where it's like got the score and shit on it. That they're like hot off the printing press as you're leaving the stadium, like that kind of vibe. It's good. I love them. They're great.
So those shirts are available. You can check out our socials. The links are also available at our website, brisbanelionsfancast.com, if you want to get your hands on those. They're great. There's a couple of youth shirts in there as well for the kids. But that Froggy Leicester shirt is awesome.
You're going to be wearing that your gravestone, aren't you?
A little bit, yeah.
Well, you're not in the gravestone, in the coffin under the gravestone, but you'll be buried in that shirt.
All right. That'll do us for next week. We will be chatting about the final series as part of our Part 3 review, and obviously trade and draft, well, not draft, but trade period will be wrapped up by that stage, so we'll know a little bit more in that space. I think you can still trade picks between now and the draft, if I remember correctly.
I think so,
that keeps changing. You can trade it on the night as well, so there'll probably be a little bit more of that. Obviously, all the trades are going to happen in the last hour on Wednesday. They always do. And we'll have a clearer idea of where it's all going there. And, time to...
So having deleted cancelled my KO account, because that's what you should do. I should do some homework and watch these finals games again. So if anyone has any links to them, please give them to me so I could provide a better insight next week, because I don't need the grand final, but I need the commentary on the prelim, and I'll do some digging and we'll find our way.
All right. Till then, Lions fans, enjoy your week, and we'll catch you next Monday.